Hello everyone, it's Pepper, and you're probably wondering how I got here. Well, let me tell you. In case you don't know, this is Final Fantasy XIV, and it's my favorite MMO of all time. Now, if you've been paying attention to the MMO scene recently, I'm sure I don't need to go into detail what is Final Fantasy XIV. In fact, I'm sure if you're watching this video right now, you are either already a player or are interested in giving the game a shot, as it is becoming the MMO to play right now. And if you want my quick recommendation if you should give this game a shot, simply put, do it. The game already has one of the best extended free trials of any MMO out there, and you will definitely get your money's worth for the low price of free. Now, before I go into detail on how I fell in love with this game, I feel like I should give you my personal history of the MMO RPG genre. Now, if you were to ask people back in the day what was the first MMO they ever played or got into, most would say World of Warcraft. WoW was everywhere, and I wanted a piece of that action. But back then, without my own computer and only being able to play on my mom's crappy Windows Vista computer and no income to pay for a subscription, I didn't really want to bother with it, and went back to gaming on consoles. But World of Warcraft's popularity didn't stop growing, and while I wasn't playing much of the game itself, I was still consuming whatever Blizzard and the community put out, including breaking into the public mainstream with South Park's episode of playing World of Warcraft. And Jesus Christ, I watched so many WoW music videos back in the day. So, without a suitable PC at the time and no money for a subscription, I would play old school RuneScape, as it did have a free-to-play option and could run on an internet browser. I played a decent amount of RuneScape in my elementary and middle school years, but I never fully committed to putting all my time into it, or even getting a premium subscription. Maybe one day I'll do a video on old school RuneScape, but that's for another time. Anyways, fast forward. Finally entering high school, I got myself a gaming PC, and I wanted to get into some MMOs, but at the time, I was against the idea of paying for a subscription to play any game, so I was stuck with the free-to-play or buy-to-play MMOs. I played Terra for like an hour, but I dropped it very quickly. Now, before I continue, I should explain what made me stop playing these games when I was a wee lad. To put it simply, it was the slow progression in combat. I just found tab targeting combat to be boring and not engaging with me. Plus, with my pea-sized attention span, I lost interest very quickly before hitting max level or even getting my rotations down pat. Now, with that in mind, let's fast forward to 2014. I have tried and played some other MMOs, but never fully committed. At the time, I was with some coworkers that were MMO veterans, and they recommended me to try Final Fantasy XIV. I did hear about Final Fantasy XIV at the time, but I heard it was a flop, which I was right. Originally, Final Fantasy XIV did release back in 2010, but it was lambasted, and Square Enix had to shut the game down in 2012 and remake it as A Realm Reborn in 2013. I did remember playing the 14-day trial of A Realm Reborn, but like all the others beforehand, I dropped it. So I held off playing Final Fantasy XIV as I was going to give one more MMO a chance to finally win me over, and that MMO was Black Desert Online. Black Desert Online was a Korean MMO that looked like to be the MMO I would finally get into, as it did solve a lot of the issues I had with past MMOs. Fast and engaging combat, gorgeous graphics, and a buy-to-play model, which I thought was more than fair. As soon as the game got confirmed a North American release, I was all over it. And while I did find the combat engaging, I didn't feel like it was an MMO to play with friends. It felt more like a single-player game that just so happened to have a lot of other players running around. Like all the others, I dropped it as well. I thought there was no chance in blue hell I was ever going to get into an MMO, and never understand why people spend so much time playing them. But I finally gave one more chance to a game I've written off, and that game was Final Fantasy XIV. Now, why did I give Final Fantasy XIV another chance? Well, not only was the revival of the game getting a lot of good press, but I also had friends that were playing it. That means I had people to enjoy the game with, but the final moment that convinced me to give this game a shot was a review from Some Call Me Johnny. Now, why did this review make such an impact? While you can always search up videos of people recommending you an MMO to give a shot, a lot of them are MMO vets, so for them it's easy to convince other MMO vets to give another MMO a shot. But I wanted a newbie or someone who never got into an MMO to recommend me one. Johnny fitted that description, and his review podcast got me really excited. Like, oh my god, this could be the MMO I was looking forward to playing if this guy recommends it. One night in November, there was a GameStop promotion that if you bought the expansion Heavensward, you would get the base game, A Realm Reborn, included as well. I got two of my friends to drive to 3 GameStops just to find a box copy of Heavensward, and later that night, I installed the game and started playing. Now, this time, I was enjoying the game and enjoying the story much more, but I will admit some things didn't immediately hook me. To the game's defense, it is the early parts of the story that tend to be a bit of a slog, because they have to set up the world building and the overall threat, but once the primals are introduced, the pacing does get a lot better. Now, I'm not sure how much better the pacing is in ARR considering the quest number squish, but I digress. My first class was a gladiator, like the same character I played in the 14-day trial. I remember getting up to the first dungeon in the game and being excited to take on these dungeons, but sadly, the good times had to end. Now, I did say in the beginning that ARR was a bit of a slog to get through because I was really excited to catch up with my friends to play the higher end content, but sadly that never happened. Unfortunately, the friends that I played with and me went through a really nasty breakup. This kind of tainted my desire to play Final Fantasy XIV anymore because I couldn't get into it. I didn't have any friends to enjoy the game with, and closing the book on the game one last time. I went on with my life, played other games, and never giving Final Fantasy XIV another shot, and just chalked it up to another MMO that I just couldn't get into. But that all changed in 2017. Now, what happened with me that made me want to return to my adventures in Eorzea? Well, let me set the scene for you real quick. It's 2017, I was a broke, depressed, flunking college student just showing up to my classes when I really didn't have any motivation to continue my studies. But one morning, after coming into what I believe was my math class, a sudden thought popped into my head, one I thought I would never have in mind. What if I gave Final Fantasy XIV another shot? I spent the rest of that class researching about renewing my sub, as the current expansion at the time was Stormblood. I was filled with excitement, scraped whatever money I had, like I said, I was unemployed, and I went ahead and I bought the Stormblood expansion, and had a blast playing through all of Reborn and Heavensward. I don't know why I suddenly had that desire to play Final Fantasy XIV again, and sure, you could say that coping my depression with video games might not be the most healthiest, but that was then. Now it's 2023, I'm still enjoying Final Fantasy XIV, and I feel like I'm only scraping the tip of the iceberg for this game. Now that we have Dawntrail to look forward to next year, I can see myself keep playing this game for many years to come. I will admit, I don't always play Final Fantasy, and sometimes I do tend to pause my subscription when life and responsibilities do come up. Or if I have a lot of other games I want to play, I tend to take a break from Final Fantasy just to focus on enjoying them. But I know, when I do renew that sub, I have a lot of new adventures to have in the realm of Final Fantasy XIV. Now that I've told you my origin story of how I got into Final Fantasy XIV, I would love to hear about your introduction to this game and how did you get into it. Feel free to leave a comment below. And thank you so much for watching. Till next time.